Hey everyone, Sky here to discuss Boogie Nights, starring Mark Wahlberg, Heather Graham, Burt Reynolds, Julianne Moore, Don Cheadle, and William H. Macy, and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Now, I remember this movie from watching a critics show a long time ago with Roger Ebert involved, and that's how I became aware of this movie. But I didn't know it was coming out in the 90s, so sorry, I'm a 80s. I grew up in the 90s and I was a little too young to see this movie. So, let's get into this review. The movie takes place in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and I always enjoy watching a movie taking place in those times of the 20th century. So I like the decoration throughout the set decoration throughout the movie. Burt Reynolds' Jack notices Eddie, played by Marky Mark Wahlberg, aka Dirk Diggler, while at a dinner with Amber, played by Julianne Moore, and chats with Eddie while he is washing dishes. I really like these characters quite a bit. They're a lot of fun to watch, even though I don't quite believe Mark Wahlberg as a 17-year-old, because there's something about his look that makes me think of a 26-year-old, something like that. Amber has a son who she doesn't see because her ex-husband doesn't let her, which is so sad. Buck, played by Don Cheadle, sells stereos and takes bullshit from his boss Jerry, and I also like the character from a little bullshit for all the bullshit he takes throughout the movie. Roller Girl, played by Heather Graham, is a foxy character, and I love her half to death. Eddie's mother is really abusive when he leaves her, and she calls him stupid. It was a horrible scene to watch, and I'm glad he runs off to the porno business, and I'll give Mark Wahlberg credit for his acting in that scene. William H. Macy's character Bill has a wife who is a complete whore and completely embarrasses him in front of a crowd while she's fucking other men. Like, honestly, just fucking divorce her, for fuck's sakes. Scotty, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, is the microphone man while he's filming Burt Reynolds' porno, who has an obsession with Eddie since the party, and I like his character here better than last week, and he gives a wonderful performance, and it's a shame he's dead now, which poor bastard. Eddie comes up with a nickname for Hollywood as Dirk Diggler, and that is such an awesome name. I want to name that cool. The scene when they're filming a porno set in the office, I thought, damn, that's an erotic scene, not only, but the way both Mark Wahlberg and Julianne Moore play that scene together was very well done. I care for the characters, and to the point I don't want anything bad happening to them, like they do later in the film, and I'll get to that scene. So, I love how Eddie, aka Dirk, dance disco style. That sequence is a fantastic sequence. Reed, played by John C. Reilly, who is another character I care a lot about, kind of, in last week's Hard 8. I think Anderson does a good job of putting Mr. Reilly in the right roles in his movies. I love Dirk's character of Brock Landier in that TV show Jack films with Dirk, plays Brock and Reed as Chest. It reminded me of hell of a lot of Starsky and Hutch style. Philip Baker Hall as Floyd is a fun scene and character, and I love the scene that he's in with when the group says hello to the 1980s, and is greatly shot. Thomas Jane, who I discussed last week with The Punisher, is Todd Parker, is an interesting character for what little he does in this movie. And that's another character I like as well. Johnny Doe is introduced at Dirk's replacement, was the only character I did not like, and Anderson as a director does a great job at showing us who to like and not like at this point. Dirk and Jack have an argument about who's the king and who's the boss, and that scene was a pretty brutal scene, how it was performed by the actors, but it was still well done. I like the song Dirk sings called "You Got the Touch." It's a good song and it's very quotable, A very quotable song, and that song was really fun. Roller Girl and Amber smoke cocaine in their system, as well as Dirk, Reed, and Todd. There's a lot of drug use in this movie. That was handled very well. Buck is rejected to get a loan from the bank because he's a pornographer. It was a moment I felt bad for him because he wants to own a stereo shop. And the way the bank handled it was completely nonsense, and I felt his pain. Just like Amber never seeing her son again I feel her pain as well. Roller Girl has sex with someone that wasn't her class, and she wanted nothing to do with. And the kid does something inappropriate to her, and overreacts. And the crew that was filming them beats the living shit out of him, and Roller Girl beats the shit out of him and bloodies him up. Out was pretty fucking brutal, with like Dirk whacking off in front of a man that he's never met, and the man and his friends beat up Dirk because he's a gay man, which not true, by the way, not that there's anything wrong with that. Was again pretty fucking brutal. Buck selects a dozen donuts, and suddenly it gets robbed. The donut shop does, and a triple Mexican standoff with the donut man, the robber, and the customer. That's not Buck, and three of them get shot, but not Buck. Was a very fucking brutal shootout. Dirk, Reed, and Todd go to a drug dealer's house, with Todd having a loaded weapon. Was a painful scene because Todd gets shot dead, and so does the drug dealer. Oh no, not the drug dealer, I'm kidding. His sidekick. But he doesn't end up dying, the drug dealer, and was a wacky, funny, and a fun scene. Dirk comes back to Jack and asks him to take him back. Was a very good acted scene between Mark Wahlberg and Burt Reynolds, and I love that scene. I love the soundtrack to this movie. It feels like when it's supposed to be set, which is the 1970s, late 1970s, early 1980s. Things get better for the characters, and the movie ends up with Dirk rehearsing for the TV show he worked on as Brock. Was a good way to end the movie. Just in brilliant way. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 8.9 out of 10. I love the setting of the movie. I really like the characters and love the soundtrack to this movie. Even though, yeah, there were times when the movie does get fucking brutal, but I still recommend it to the people into filmmaking. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for Boogie Nights, and I will be back next week with Magnolia. And until next time, you got the touch!